You walk past an elementary school in a small Korean town, and something feels off before you can name it. Then you realize what it is. There are no sounds coming from the playground. Not because it's a holiday, because there aren't enough children left to fill it. South Korea isn't just facing a low birth rate anymore. It's facing the consequences of one, spreading slowly through almost every part of society, from classrooms to factories to entire towns disappearing from the map. You've probably already heard the headline number. Korean women today have, on average, fewer than one child in their lifetime, the lowest fertility rate ever recorded for any country in the world. But a number that small stops being just a statistic once you start tracing what it actually does to a society over 20, 30, 50 years. It stops being about individual choices and starts being about the structural weight of an entire population aging out faster than it's being replaced. Start with the schools because they're often the first visible casualty. Demographer Cho Young-tae has documented how rural and even some suburban school districts have seen enrollment collapse so sharply that entire schools have merged, downsized, or closed outright, not because of budget cuts, but simply because there aren't enough children born in the surrounding area to fill the classrooms. Picture a teacher standing in front of 8 students in a room built for 30, doing the same job her predecessor did a generation ago, except now half her energy goes into keeping a shrinking school administratively justifiable rather than simply teaching. That shrinking pipeline doesn't stop at graduation. It flows directly into the labor force. Economist Yoon Suk-min has projected that South Korea's working-age population, the people actually paying into pensions, staffing factories, and filling the offices that keep the economy running, will shrink by a significant share over the coming decades, even as the number of retirees keeps climbing. Picture what that mismatch actually looks like on the ground. Fewer young workers available to fill manufacturing jobs, fewer new employees entering hospitals and elder care facilities, at precisely the moment those facilities need more staff than ever, not fewer. Here's the other half of that equation, and it's the part that makes this genuinely urgent rather than just interesting. South Korea is simultaneously aging at one of the fastest rates ever recorded among developed nations. The share of the population over 65 is climbing so quickly that the country is on track to have one of the oldest populations on Earth within a single generation. Put those two trends together, a shrinking base of young workers and a rapidly swelling population of retirees, and you get a ratio that should worry anyone doing the math. Fewer people working, paying taxes, and contributing to pension systems, supporting more people who've already exited the workforce and now depend on it. Picture what that burden actually feels like for someone in their 20s or 30s right now. Sociologist Aaron Chung has pointed out that younger Koreans are increasingly aware they'll be asked to shoulder a pension and healthcare system originally built around a completely different population pyramid, one with far more workers supporting far fewer retirees than the ratio they're actually inheriting. That awareness doesn't just sit quietly in the background. It factors directly into decisions about marriage, childbearing, and long-term financial planning, reinforcing the very trend that created the imbalance in the first place. Now here's the geographic twist that complicates the simple story of national decline. This isn't happening evenly across the country. Seoul and its surrounding metropolitan area remain intensely crowded, arguably more crowded than ever, as young people continue concentrating there for jobs, universities, and opportunity. Meanwhile, large stretches of rural Korea are emptying out at an accelerating pace, with some counties reporting median ages well into the 50s. Entire villages where the youngest resident is someone's grandchild visiting for a holiday rather than someone who actually lives there year-round. Regional planner Kim Jin-soo has described a two-speed Korea emerging in real time. One hyper-dense, youthful, and economically dynamic. The other quietly aging into what demographers bluntly call extinction risk municipalities. Local governments genuinely modeling scenarios in which their populations could functionally disappear within decades if current trends continue unchanged. This is where the conversation about robots and artificial intelligence usually enters, and it's worth taking seriously rather than dismissing as science fiction. South Korea already has one of the highest rates of industrial robot density in manufacturing anywhere in the world, partly as a direct response to exactly this labor shortage. Robots can absolutely fill certain gaps on an assembly line. What they cannot easily do is provide hands-on elder care, staff a rural hospital, or repopulate a shrinking classroom with actual children. Automation can soften the economic edges of this crisis, cannot, on its own, reverse the underlying demographic math. There's another solution South Korea has increasingly had to consider: immigration. Bringing in more foreign workers could help fill labor shortages in factories, agriculture, construction, and elder care. But immigration alone cannot solve the deeper demographic problem. New workers can fill jobs, but they don't instantly create the families, children, and communities needed to reverse population decline. South Korea has historically been far less dependent on immigration than many Western countries, which means expanding it would also require a significant shift in how the country thinks about national identity, language, and social integration. So picture the fuller arc, side by side. A teacher in a nearly empty rural classroom, doing more administrative survival work than actual teaching. A 28-year-old in Seoul calculating, with real numbers in front of her, exactly how much of her future paycheck will go towards supporting a pension system built for a population pyramid that no longer exists. A regional government official modeling, with genuine seriousness, whether his county will still have enough residents to function as a town in 30 years. A factory floor increasingly staffed by robotic arms, not because of some grand technological ambition, but simply because there weren't enough young workers left to hire. Here's what this ultimately comes down to. It's tempting to frame this as a simple demographic crisis, a matter of not enough babies being born. The more accurate framing is broader and more uncomfortable. This is what happens when an entire economic and social model, built for rapid growth, concentrated opportunity, and an assumption of endless young labor, runs directly into the biological reality that people can only sustain that pace of sacrifice and competition for so many generations before they simply stop reproducing the system that demanded it of them. So which is it, really? A demographic crisis or a crisis of the model itself? The honest answer is probably both, tangled together so tightly they're difficult to separate. The birth rate is the symptom that shows up in the statistics first, because it's the easiest thing to measure. But underneath it sits a harder question that no fertility subsidy has managed to answer. Whether a society built around relentless competition, concentrated opportunity, and an assumption that the next generation would simply keep absorbing more pressure than the last, can actually keep functioning once that generation quietly declines to show up in the numbers the model always assumed it would. You started this noticing a silent playground in a small town. Now you know that silence isn't really about a shortage of children. It's the audible sound of an entire societal model reaching the limits of what it can demand from the people living inside it. One empty classroom, one aging village, and one exhausted young worker at a time.